Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
Welcome to another edition of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. I'm your host. Thank you for joining episode 53. Like always, if you want my show notes, head over to drpierresblog.com/LLP053. Again, if you want today's show notes, please head over to drpierresblog.com/LLP053. And before we get into discussion on today's topic at hand, I want you to, if you have not had a chance, go ahead and check out the last episode, episode 52, where we talk about the flu. We talk about the epidemic that is the flu, and where I strongly encourage my listeners to get the flu shot and give them reasons why they need to get the flu shot, because this year we've seen such a rampant uptick of flu cases in the hospital, in the outpatient setting, that it's starting to kind of come to hash, right? So again, if you have not had a chance, go over, check over my last episode, episode 52 at drpierresblog.com/LLP052. So for today's episode, we are talking about healthcare, and more importantly, we're going to be talking about why is our healthcare so bad that Amazon wants to start a new one, right? Like Amazon wants to start a whole new program, endeavor, a whole new insurance plan because they don't like our system. It's going to be very interesting, and I am alluding to recent reports that Amazon, as well as two other major companies, are teaming up to form their own healthcare plan, essentially to rival what's going on here in the U.S. So sit back and get ready to be empowered, get ready to learn why your healthcare may not be as good as you think it is. So this is a scenario. So I get an email titled Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, and Berkshire Hathaway to start their own healthcare tech company. And immediately I'm interested because I use Amazon quite often for my everyday purchases. And of course, if you may not be aware of Berkshire Hathaway, you are pretty sure you're aware of Warren Buffett. You know, one of the richest men in the world, right? So that's his operation. So immediately I'm interested to see, what is some of the comments and what's the goal, right? What are they planning, right? So I read this article and I'll just give you guys a quick summary. I will put a link in the show notes to it. And it says a couple of their goals, right? So they want to focus on a new form of healthcare, right? They want to have a more independent aspect when it comes to healthcare, taking care of the employees. And the goal with what they're trying to do is they're going to form their own healthcare insurance company strictly for their employees. And they're going to focus on more improved technological solutions that are going to help simplify the quality of care, make it more transparent, and most importantly, especially for all these businesses, most importantly, make it at a reasonable cost. And I'm interested. Why? Because this is a discussion that we've been having, especially in the medical, circles for a while. Like, what can we do to make healthcare more affordable, while also making sure that it doesn't lack, right? Like, there's no point for something to be cheaper if it's not as good, right? So, like, what do we do for that, right? And of course, if you've been rocking with the Lunch and Learned podcasts and videos or wherever from Dr. Pierre, right, it's been one of my main, purposes of even doing all of what I've been doing. Like, I've been trying to find different ways for people to help consume their health care and make it easier for them to digest and then also take action upon it, right? So, I see something like this and I'm extremely interested because medicine has always been one of those fields that's kind of been behind when we talk about, like, from a tech standpoint. So I want to know what these tech giants are going to do, what these folks with a lot of money are going to do to kind of, make those things happen, right? But I think it begs the question, right? If these three, huge tech companies, billion-dollar companies, are getting together because they want to form something new, right? I think the obvious question you got to ask yourself is why. Like, why do they want to change what's been happening, right? Like, what's been happening at this moment as far as our current system that's making them say, you know what? I don't like the way it's going over there, and I want to try something different, right? Like, so I think it's important to understand, like, when these companies do these things, what's their intention and what's the reason why they're doing it. And I think for some people, right, like, again, I know there's a lot of people who, are, very pro United States, and United States is the best and all those good things I understand, right? But unfortunately, reality and the numbers don't really speak for that fact, right? Especially when we're talking about healthcare. So I want to kind of, and again, I always like to, get my listeners into that picture and mode of what I'm talking about when I say, U.S. really isn't the best when it comes to healthcare. And these are just going to be some straight historical facts that again, I'm going to put some links in the show notes that you guys can kind of follow up on your own if you don't believe me. But in health rankings, right? So the U.S., when they compare the U.S. versus other industrialized countries, right? And they named 11 of them. They listed 11 of them. Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and United Kingdom, right? So when we compare the United States versus all of those different companies, right? The United States ranks dead last in measures of access, measures of equity, measures of quality, measures of efficiency, and measures of just having healthier people. So again, I want you to kind of that's what I want you to kind of think about in the back burner when you see something like these companies that want to say, I want to do my own thing, right? Because they recognize that at this current system, we are not doing a good job actually taking care of who we need to take care of, right? Again, some more facts. United States has the highest cost per person with the lowest performance, right? So we're spending more as a country per person, about approximately $8,000 per person, right? In comparison to some of these other countries that spend as low as like $3,000 per person. But yet we have the lowest performance, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Why is our healthcare much more expensive and we're not getting any bang or buck out of it, right? And some of these things that they talk about, some of the reasons that kind of point to why the United States just isn't, where it needs to be, is the deficiency in access to primary care. And then just this inequity of primary care, inequity of our healthcare system in general, the inefficiency of our healthcare system in general. If you've ever had to, go to a doctor's appointment or find a doctor who may be in a subspecialist, very quickly how difficult it is, especially here in the United States, to get to that physician, right? And this is if you have insurance or don't have insurance, right? And it's costly to get to that doctor, right? It's costly to get to work within the healthcare system that we have here in the United States. And I think that's where, and I think that's the background that we have to really understand when you see some of the moves that are being made by our insurance companies and by our political, pundits. When it comes to healthcare, right? Like, we are not in a good place, but yet we act like we are. We're not in a good place in regards to how we're taking care of our patients, but we act like we are. We're not in a good place in regards to how we take care of infants, but yet we act like we are, right? We are just not doing a good job taking care of us and continuing to be more healthy. Again, more facts, right? Again, like I said, I'll try to I definitely want to, especially I want you guys to know numbers, right? Because I think a lot of my listeners, are very concrete listeners, right? So when they hear some of these numbers, right, it gets them a much better perspective, right? When I say, hey, you know what, the United States healthcare is trash, and I hate to say the word trash, right? I feel like trash is a strong word, but when we're dead last amongst a lot of these industrialized companies, right, I'm not sure a cuter way to say how bad we are, right? So I'm just saying trash, and again, stick with me. If don't let me offend your personability to the United States just because I say our healthcare is trash, because unfortunately it is. In 2016 report, 2016, this is just about a year and some change. Adults in the U.S. were more likely than the other 10 countries to go without needed healthcare because of cost. Now think about that, right? We are more likely than these other industrialized countries to go without healthcare just because of the cost, not the access, right? Like I hear a lot of people when they talk about some of these different countries, they say, "Oh, well, you got to wait 3 months to see a doctor." No. In this country, that we don't have that problem. The only problem is it costs so much to see that doctor that you end up not going. One third of the U.S. adults went without recommended care, right? 1/3 didn't go to see a doctor. 1/3 didn't even fill a prescription because it costs too much. That's scary and that's sad when you think about where our country is at this time, right? 15% of people were worried about having enough money for nutritious food. 16% struggled to afford their rent or mortgage and their medications, right? Again, that's 15%, right? That amount of people are having to choose, am I going to pay my mortgage or am I going to take this medication? Am I going to feed my kids or am I going to take this medication, right? If you are in that position, or if you are in that position as you're listening to the podcast, you understand that this is a decision that you does not get taken lightly. Half of the U.S. Adults, right, struggle to get health care on the weekends or evenings without having to go to the emergency department. And I think this is something that I want my emergency room physicians to really take heed, right? There's a reason why you guys are seeing a lot more primary care related issues in your emergency room, right? It's not that they don't want to go see a doctor. They just can't. They can't make it to the doctor's appointment. Again, let's think about this. Majority of the people, right? I don't want to say majority of people, but let's say a good amount of people, right? A good amount of U.S. adults are usually going to be working 8 to 4, 8 to 5, 9 to 5. Guess what time the doctor's office is usually open? 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, right? So you have a situation where I want to go to the doctor, but I got to choose going to work. And I can't take time off and lose money to then turn around and give the money that I lose or give the money that I don't make for a doctor's appointment copay and for a doctor's recommended medication, right? Again, people are having to choose their livelihood, and unfortunately, when it comes to healthcare, it doesn't rank up the top, right? That's where we're having to face, really and truly at a day-to-day basis. I talked about some of those categories that the U.S. ranks last in when it talks about just healthier people, right? U.S. ranks last in infant mortality and the deaths that could have been prevented. I want you to understand that, right? And deaths that we could have prevented, we're dead last, right? Not even close, right? Talking about access to care, another category that we have to think about. In the U.S., people have the hardest time, again, affording the health care, right? We rank last on every single measure regards to cost in comparison to these other countries, right? And again, I'm not painting this bleak picture of the United States. I'm just letting you know when it comes to health care, we are doing an absolutely terrible job at actually the goal, right? And I say the goal, right? And I almost should say the goal in quotation marks, right? As a physician, our goal is always to take care of the patient. Unfortunately, in our United States, in the system that we have here, the goal necessarily doesn't really mean take care of the patients. It really means take care of the bottom line. And sometimes that conflicts. Sometimes taking care of the bottom line means less people need to go without their care. So that's the kind of setup that I want you guys to kind of be led into when we go through and we talk about the episode, right? Because again, I think it's admirable that these companies want to do something different, but I at the same time it's sad, right? At the same time it's sad because that means that they understand that we are not doing a good job at what we're supposed to do. And not only are we not doing a good job at what we're supposed to do, we're spending so much more money trying to do it. right? So I think that's why when you see a news article kind of flash like this, you know what? Well, like, you have to ask yourself, why do we need to adopt this new way of thinking, right? Like, why do we need to think about like what is being happening with our healthcare that makes it so that a company says, you know what, I'm gonna have my own health insurance just for my employees, because what they're doing on this outside is just does not work for us. Like, we know that a healthier employee works more, right? We know that a happier employee works more, right? Which again, at the end, will make more money for the company. So a company can't have their employee sick. A company can't have their employee have to miss a half day of work just to, take a doctor's appointment. And I really stress a half day of work. And I've talked about this on previous podcasts or even blogs, where I have patients who they go to some doctor's office who don't respect their time. And I really say don't respect their time because their appointment may be 9 o'clock and they don't get seen till 10:30. So again, if I had a flexible boss who said, you know what, if your appointment's at 9, just get here by like 10 o'clock and you're fine. I can't even give my boss that option because my doctor doesn't even respect the time that my appointment is. My doctor is double booking people, he's triple booking people, or he or she's not even coming in late or not even coming in on time and, causing me to be late at work, right? So imagine, I used to have a lot of patients who used to almost be like surprised that if their appointment was 10 o'clock, I got to see them at 10 o'clock and they were out, as soon as possible, right? Like they didn't know what to do. A lot of them had such a preconceived notion on what usually goes on during a doctor's appointment that they would clear like half a day, sometimes a full day just to come see me, and realize like now they got the whole day to do something different because their doctor's appointment is already done and gone with. So that's why I commend these organizations that really want to, cause a little ripple in the healthcare system, because I think we need it, right? And I think we need it because if we continue to go down this path, right, like again, we're already dead last. We're already dead last when it comes to healthcare, right, in a lot of categories, except when it comes to how much we spend. We're already dead last in a lot of these categories. If we continue to operate in this fashion, right? Like again, we should definitely stop saying like we are the best country, because when it comes to healthcare, we are not. But now here comes the flip side, right? And the reason why I say the flip side is because when I saw the article, right, and I started doing my Google searching to really kind of get an idea of what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. I found it very interesting, right, that there wasn't a lot of pushback. Right, like there wasn't a lot of people like in the comments, because I'm good on reading the comments, right? There wasn't a lot of people in the comments saying, "Oh, this is a terrible idea." Like, what do you mean you're going to do something different? There's nothing wrong. Like, there wasn't really that, right? There wasn't this response from the general public that says, "Oh my God, no, you can't do that." Like, no, we need to stay with the old way. I don't like change. There wasn't that, right? And I thought that was funny because, as a physician, we're going through this transition now where physicians are starting to say, you know what? This healthcare system that y'all got going on, it don't benefit me. And because it doesn't benefit me, I'm going to do something different. And because it doesn't benefit me, I don't want to have to rely on the Blue Crosses of the world, the Humanas of the world, the Aetnas of the world. I don't want to have to rely on them, right, to get a patient in my door. And I don't want to have to rely on them to get paid. Like, peep this scenario, right? You go to Walmart, you get grocery from Walmart, and you leave with the groceries after you pay. You go to a restaurant, you eat the food, and you leave the restaurant after you pay, right? Like, we're so used to paying for services as we get them. But for some reason, right, we have enacted this system that's kind of been the way it goes. We enacted a system where, no. Hey, doc, you submit a paperwork. Like, you see my patient today. You submit a paperwork, and if everything is looking good on your end, I'll send you a check 2 to 3 weeks later. Like, think about that, right? Like, think if your job did that, right? Think if your job said, hey, I need you to work these, 2 to 3 weeks. And then after a month or so, if everything looks good, I'll send you a check for what you did, right? Like, you guys would go crazy, right? Like we would absolutely go crazy if we knew that I did a serviceable work that day, and all of a sudden you're not going to even like recognize I did the serviceable work that day until 2 to 3 weeks later, right? And what makes it worse, right? Imagine if you did that job that day, you did the work that day, and then you sent your invoice in and say, hey, this is the work I did. And I say, you know what? You didn't cross the T's right there, and you didn't dot your I's the way I like it. So I'm not going to pay for that. Sorry. But if you want, you can appeal my decision, but you'll have to talk to me next week, right? Like imagine if that was the system that your job employed to pay you, right? Like again, you probably would not be working there for a long time. But in the healthcare system, that's kind of the way it goes, right? Like you see your doctor that day. You may pay your doctor a copay because you have to, or in fact, you have to, most of the time you do have to. So you pay your doctor a copay, maybe $50, maybe $25, maybe $15, maybe $5, and your doctor has the hope that your doctor does everything correctly, so that when they go to send that bill in to your insurance company, they can actually get paid for it. So we've had this like transition, right? We had this transition with physicians who say, you know what, enough is enough. And again, I live in South Florida, so I may be seeing more of it in this population because I think more and more. I have a lot more physicians down here, so we have more people who are willing to try it. But I have a lot of physicians who are going into this almost like a concierge direct medical care model, where it says, you know what, I'm going to take care of you today. You are going to pay me today, and if you want, you could submit your bill to your insurance company, but again, after that, it's all on you, right? Like I don't deal with insurance companies, and that's a new concept that I don't think patients are not, I wouldn't say ready for, but they're just not, fully grasping the importance of why a doctor would want to do that. And they don't understand. Like, what do you mean you don't take insurance, right? Like again, for a lot of physicians, if a lot of patients, if your doctor, said they didn't take insurance, like you wouldn't know what to do. You're like, that makes sense. If you don't take insurance, how do I come see you? Well, you pay me directly. You walk into my office, you get some services done, and then I send you the bill. Then you pay that bill right before you leave, right? Like I think that's where we're trying to go with it. We're trying to get our patients to understand that this is a new model. And I can tell you, right now I work in hospital medicine, so I don't have to go by that model because I'm employed. But if I was doing outpatient medicine tomorrow, I would be in a concierge-like practice. Like I don't think I would deal with insurance because I understand the headaches and administrative costs and everything that it deals with just to have to deal with insurance, that I would rather have to work harder just to gain a foothold in the community, just to build my patient load, than go through the insurance companies, right? And I'm totally 100% fine doing that. And I think we're going to start seeing a wave of more and more physicians coming out to practice who are ready to go with that wave. So again, I really commend what the Amazons and JP Morgan, I really commend what these three companies are trying to do, because they understand that the issue at hand isn't that they're trying to save a little money, which they will. It is that we have a healthcare system that just isn't good, and trying to do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result, is insanity. So they know that I got to do something different, and this is something different. But I just found it comical that now that they want to do something different, like no one really seems to be up in arms. Maybe the insurance companies will see. You'll see if that how that kind of plays the hand. But no one was, especially from the common general public, no one is up in arms that they want to do it. And in fact, I think they're happy that they want to do it. So I just want to make sure that those same people who aren't up in arms, don't go crazy when they run into a physician who says, "Oh, I don't take insurance, you have to pay me directly." Because I think that's where it's going. I think that's where it needs to go. I think you get better care when your doctor doesn't have to deal with insurance companies. Because again, remember, for your doctors who have to deal with insurance companies, they end up having to have about, I'd say, 3 to 4, especially if you're outpatient medicine, they end up having about 3,000 to 4,000 patients in their practice. And the reason why they do that is because they have to see so many more patients just to make a decent amount of living. And because the insurance companies will, decrease their wages and, make it so that you have to double and triple book, right? Like, again, it kind of comes full circle. Again, you running late from your doctor's appointment because it was supposed to be at 9, but you didn't get seen till 10. And the reason why is because your doctor had to double book. The reason why your doctor has to double book because he's dealing with an insurance company that says, you know what, I know your time is valuable, but I'm not going to really pay you that well for your time. So you should probably think about seeing more people if you want to maximize it. And that's what it's doing. Again, I can't blame the physicians because that's kind of the position that they've been kind of forced in. And now a lot of them, some of them I should say, are really trying to make a difference and really trying to make a change and see if that's a way to go, right? So I'm excited for, what's to come. I'm excited to see what comes out of, Amazon, changing the way they want to operate, especially in the healthcare system. Like I read one report that Amazon was even trying to, have their own pharmacy online. And for those who've ever had to pick up a prescription medication, you understand the cost can be so prohibitive that, again, you have people having to choose their blood pressure medicine versus eating dinner. You have people had to choose their asthma medication versus, paying rent, right? Paying their mortgage, right? Paying, their light bill, right? There's decisions every day people are making right now of what they should do despite of, right? Despite the fact that if I don't take my diabetes medication, I might end up in a hospital and end up with a much bigger bill, right? And end up with much more, monetary, a compromise, especially on my well-being. But they're having to choose because they really have no options. So I want you guys to kind of think about that. I want you guys to kind of put that on the back burner when you see what, this new Amazon and JP Morgan, you see whatever their partnership is going to go. Because best believe if it works and they show that, they're saving their employees a lot more money, they're saving themselves a lot more money from having to, pay out to a different insurance model and different, healthcare system, best believe they're going to expand it because that's what's going to happen. And I'm hoping that as a physician and our physicians kind of get it together, especially those in the outpatient workforce, those kind of get it together and understand that we, need to be, on the same boat, right? We need to be watching the Amazons of the world and ask, why Amazon doesn't think your healthcare isn't as good, right? Because if they don't think it's as good, like, should I be thinking it's as good? It's because it's not. So again, I thank you guys, right, for, taking the time to listen to my little health informal rant on, why Amazon doesn't think your healthcare is any good. And as always, I appreciate you guys sticking with the Lunch and Learn lessons of week in and week out. And I'll see you guys next week. Remember, the goal of, Dr. Barry and the Lunch and Learn is to help empower you to make decisions that will take control of your healthcare. Hey, Dr. Bear here. You have just listened to another great episode of The Lunch and Learn with Dr. Bear. I hope you're excited and hope you learned something from today's episode. I hope you learned from all of the episodes that you get a chance to listen to. Before you leave, if you not have already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I am everywhere where you like to listen to podcasts at, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, wherever you like listening to podcasts, the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry is there. Also, go ahead and follow me on my social media outlets. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, as well as Twitter, all at Lunch Learn Pod, whether it be twitter.com/lunchlearnpod, facebook.com/lunchlearnpod, and instagram.com/lunchlearnpod, where you can, get any videos, any pictures I may post, any messages or writing. So please follow me on there right after you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, and right before you leave me a 5-star review on either Apple Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or wherever you can actually leave me a review. I'm much appreciative of all of you guys' support. And like I said earlier in the show, I will see you next week.